Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the 13th Fleet After Action Report. I am your host, Chris, and I am happy that you're joining me tonight. Some of you may be expecting to hear some stuff about the Rebellion in the Rim campaign that we've been doing for Armada, but this is an X-Wing night, so we are not going to be touching base on that, other than to give you a few little programming notes, I suppose is the best way to put it. First off, I did record the entirety of the Rebellion in the Rim pivotal battle that we did this past Sunday. We did that here on Twitch, so you can still catch the replay on that if you want to watch that. Unfortunately, when I tried to edit it, the file was just too damn big. My editor did not want to touch it. I was not able to do anything with that file, so I will not be able to get that pivotal battle up on YouTube, unfortunately. So for those of you who are watching the replay on this and watching it on YouTube, understand that I just couldn't get it to happen. But that has taught me a valuable lesson for the future. When we do have our next pivotal battle, which hopefully is not the last, there may be two more. When that happens, we will actually break that down, and I will stop the video at the end of each turn and probably have to post up separate videos for each turn of the pivotal battle because it just takes a long time to get through that. So if you watched it, I hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to play. We won't be talking about anything on what happened there until next Monday. On our after action report, I'll have the Armada gang on and we'll touch base on that. The other thing that we will be touching base on is that we are going to be doing a tournament in Ohio on Saturday back at Iron Anvil Games, I think it is. I'll have to double check. I apologize, guys, that I messed up the name of the store, but Thunder Forge. There we go. They are having a tournament this weekend, and I'm going to go out there. I am hopefully going to be able to set up to stream some games and play some games as well, so you'll get more of the traditional Armada feel on that. We will also have, of course, on Thursday, we will be doing round 4 of Rebellion in the Rim, so you'll get to see that. And as always, Tuesday, we'll have our Tuesday night X-Wing, which I am going to actually try to play in this time around. I have a new tactic that I want to try out and just see how it works out. But, that being said, tonight we are talking X-Wing, and I have Chris Emmick with me, and we have a very special subject today, and I'm hoping that there are some people here that are watching the live stream that will share their thoughts and their ideas on it, because you know, as much as I love the Rebellion in the Rim campaign for Armada, I feel like we need something equivalent for X-Wing.
Yeah, you and I have been talking about this for a little bit, and we're thinking about what could we do, especially after Adepticon that's coming up this month, to keep us flying together. And so you came up with the idea of having some sort of campaign, and I thought that was a great idea because I think it allows for a lot of flexibility towards, determining what we're flying and be able to customize things and do some like list building things that are interesting, that aren't necessarily like your normal standard or extended, right?
Yeah,
And
not really looking at meta. We're looking at, okay, what's going to work in the context of this story that we are creating.
right. And making sure that, we have cool and new exciting ways to list build, right? And so that way, every player comes in and wants to do well because the benefits of doing well will add to what they can do the next time that they fly. So yeah, it sounds really cool.
And I think one of the greatest challenges when looking at that, I mean, Rebellion in the Rim has done a lot of great things for Armada, and it is a very, very fun campaign. But the difference between Armada and X-Wing is that X-Wing is very, very, very character driven. You know, the star of the show in Armada tends to be the ships. I mean, you do bring in officers to complement the rest of the fleet, but ultimately you've got a lot of flexibility on what you can do with your ships in Armada. Whereas with X-Wing, you pretty much are choosing the characters that you want to play. And a lot of times it's based on their abilities, but sometimes it's just because you like that particular character in Star Wars. So when you're looking at a campaign, you want to have something to where the characters that you are creating are going to grow over time, are going to grow as your story grows. And I think that's where you have to start off when looking at how to build a campaign. So, what do you think about, you know, how do you define base fighter statistics? Because I'm not sure that every fighter in X-Wing has a generic pilot.
Just about everyone does.
Okay.
Yeah, just about every ship in 2.0 and 2.5 has generics. And so you can base off of that. Even like some of the older extended ships will have generics as well. So if we were looking at this where we would have a custom squadron of like different pilots than not necessarily Luke and Biggs and Wedge, but we have like a insert pilot name here guy that starts off as a generic, then you could probably put him as a Red Squad X-Wing. The I think he's I3 or I4. I think he's I3, and it just has the basic stats and stuff. And then if we were looking at like character driven from that standpoint, we can just start with that and add talents and add stuff as we go based off of how well they do. If we wanted to do more of a like using the existing characters, then we may want to strip back some of the things, take away the ability to take proton torpedoes on Luke, take away Wedge's ability or change Wedge's ability where he's not always removing one defense die every time that he shoots. So I think there's some wiggle design room in that. But I think I think one of the pitfalls with that would be how much work are we going to put in to make every person unique, right? And customizing the pilot talents and stuff, that might be tough across like multiple factions. And actually, that's a good question. How many factions are going to be in this campaign?
And before we got on, we were talking a little bit about the world building, and originally I was looking at trying to use the Corellian conflict map to make this work. But the more that I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking that we probably have to create an original map and go with an idea that maybe does not necessarily fit in the existing lore, which that was a little bit of a change of what I was thinking originally. But like, set up this new planet that has some sort of resource that different factions would want, and then you can pick any two factions that you want to go after those resources on that planet.
Right. And honestly, we can also do, if we're spitballing here. I mean, are you familiar with the old Battlefront 2 game for Xbox and PS2?
Not really, no.
So they had what they called a Galaxy Conquest mode, where a single player would have multiple armies and like multiple starship squadrons, essentially. And they would go to a planet and fight like a space battle to gain control of the space area, and then fight a ground battle to get control of the planet, and then it was very risk-like in the sense that you're just trying to capture all of the planets, and you get so many additional resources to upgrade your stuff and to buy upgrades for your troops and stuff. So it had like a navigation kind of thing where you could just move and attack and take and stuff. So having that kind of planetary structure, even reusing something from like the board from Star Wars Rebellion, which has all the different sectors of the Star Wars galaxy listed out and how they're connected. Even using something like that would give us like that ability to say, okay, my squadron, we're going here and we're fighting for this, and another opponent is going to also come here and contest it, or the opponent already controls it and they have to decide whether or not they're going to contest it or not. So I think there's ways that we could the core planet would be cool, like having a brand new planet that is floating out there and everybody's fighting over that resource. I think that would be cool too, because then we could just kind of come up with what unique benefits they would get from that. So like, maybe a generic becomes one with the Force because you won a battle in the special Force land, right? So there's I think either way that we go here, I think there's plenty of ways for us to kind of drive. There's plenty of ways to design having our players choose where they want to battle and give them the appropriate benefits.
Now, one thing that I want to stick with as far as the way the Rebellion in the Rim handles it, and I think it's also the way the Corellian conflict originally handled it, is that when one faction has the initiative for the turn, okay, and it's built for two teams of three to go against each other, okay, and so whoever has the initiative chooses the first attack, and they choose one of their squads to attack this location, and then the opponent has to choose one of their squads to defend that location. Then whoever doesn't have initiative picks the second assault, is the attacker at that second base, and then flip back and forth until all the squads have gotten involved in that.
Right.
The reason why I was looking at a planetary scale is simply because of the hyperdrive idea, the simple fact that squads tend to fight on a smaller scale than the capital ships, of course, and typically they need the capital ships to get them to where they're going. I know Rebellion fighters had hyperdrives and everything. If you keep it on one single planet, I think the story flows a little bit better, if that makes sense. Or you keep it on a planet and perhaps the surrounding moons of that planet.
Right, and you could like say each player has a permanent base that they'll always be able to fly back to and base out of and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's cool. Like I'm 100% on board with that. But even with a single planet, if we had like fleets around the planet in different areas, just kind of floating out in space and protecting themselves, and then sending squads down to contest certain areas of the planet, I think that would make a lot of sense too.
Yeah, that does. That really does.
And don't forget, we do or at least several members of our group here in Lexington have a bunch of the 1.0 Epic ships. And so we can incorporate that as part of the potential missions that could happen. Oh, an Imperial Raider has shown up, and you can go hit this Raider, and somebody has to go defend that Raider, or another person wants to go hit that Raider, and so you got to take each other out while flying around the Raider,
And I had considered that, but there's one thing that I don't like about that idea, and that's simply accessibility.
Hmm.
I wanted to make this accessible to as many players as possible, and there's a lot of players that don't have access to those epic scale ships.
Well, I was thinking less that they would control those ships and more that those ships would be NPCs.
Right.
So they would be new battlegrounds essentially. We'd be able to like put them in the middle of a 3x6 area
Gotcha.
and have two or four squads contest over them. And whichever side wins gets the benefit of capturing the raider.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing that, and I haven't seen it yet. I don't think anybody has actually gotten their hands on it. The battle over Endor yet.
Hmm.
But
It's not out yet.
a lot of the things that I've read about that would fit in really well with that,
Oh
because
yeah.
you got the turbo laser setups that you could use, and I would be kind of anxious to fit that in. I had been looking at, for special battles, some of the things that they've already put out, like
Hmm.
Siege over Coruscant and Battle of Yavin sets. But unfortunately, I just don't see anything in there that I think translates terribly well, unfortunately.
Well, not in like a planet sense for sure. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not going to do the Death Star run on Tatooine,
Now,
right?
maybe, yeah, maybe some of the stuff from that Mandalorian event.
Hmm. Yeah,
I,
that
I
was those two events were a lot of fun. And as far as like how I'll give AMG credit, the way they did the Child of Mandalore upgrades with a generic, and allowing that ship to take additional upgrades and take a special Mandalorian either offensive or defensive ability. That was a whole lot of fun to play with. And so I definitely feel like having some knobs for us to twist with the generics is a good idea. Um, but getting back to what different kind of battles we can do, uh, back at the end of 2.0, FFG released this. You can see it.
it's getting
Probably
a little
blurred
bit
out.
blurry. Yeah. What is it? And
Whatever.
I'll,
This is the Star Wars X-wing epic battles rules and scenarios.
okay.
So it has rules for um squadron flying. You can you'll have special templates that will set up where you can fly 6 ships in like an actual squadron, and you only use one template to move them all, and they all rearrange around the squad leader. So that's included in this. And then also, there's a bunch of scenarios that they were trying out. Some were free for all, some were team battles and stuff like that. And so I think this is where a official version of Aces High came from, if that
Okay.
gives you some context.
Yeah, I'll definitely need to take a look at that and see if some of those ideas, because I would like to include some ideas that people are familiar with. I know that there are other campaigns, homebrew campaigns that people have put together. I
Hmm.
did some searching. I never found anything that I really really loved, but there are definitely some ideas that can be taken from all of that and hopefully combine it into something that will be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
One thing that we were talking about was, of course, building your own pilots and everything. And with the Armada campaign, of course, you're looking at an admiral that you are building that is commanding the entire fleet. And at
Right.
first, I was looking at this from the perspective of having a squad leader with a bunch of, squadron mates below him, wingmen and things like that. But
Hmm.
there is something to be said about actually coming up with a roster of pilots,
Right.
and actually developing each of them individually. And you can have certain locations that you take over on the map get you the ability to add certain upgrades to your ship, regardless of
Mhm.
whether or not that generic could have that. Now you can have it because you won the battle at that location. Now you can get this.
Right. Right.
And I had kind of broken it up into skill categories, starting off with initiative, which can help you improve the reaction speed of your main pilot, along with some other little tricks that might help you be able to build into whatever you're trying to do. And then with engineering, you've got mechanical upgrades. So the mechanical upgrades would be things that would be focused on. Hold on a second. I'm trying to find where I made my notes. Reading is
By the
fundamental,
way, while
folks.
you're looking, I'm going to show everybody the X-wing Epic.
Okay.
This is the box set that was released. I had to turn off my screen blur.
No worries. So yeah, with engineering, you'd have sensor modification or tech upgrades, and then
Mhm.
with training, you could be picking up talents and force. With ordnance, you'd be picking up things like torpedo, missile, or devices. With command, you could add officers or gunners,
Mhm.
depending on your ship. That doesn't make sense for every ship, of course. I
Right.
don't see a TIE fighter adding a gunner.
I mean, the Special Forces tie has it.
Really?
Or yeah, for First Order. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that you look at. You break down the categories, and so if somebody takes a certain location, then now they have access to this upgrade at however many points you want to limit it to, because you don't want it to get out of hand. I mean, there are certain upgrades that are expensive for a reason.
Right. Yeah, and the balance the balancing of the upgrades and the talents and all the things that you can do to your ship can spiral if we're not careful. Um, I I am a big I was a big player in Imperial Assault, the competitive side of Imperial Assault. And I've played, a couple of the campaigns. And one of the problems with the original campaign in Imperial Assault is that after if if the Imperials win too many times in a row, or if the Rebels win too many times in a row, there's not a good catch up mechanic.
Yeah.
There's not anything that will the Imperials just get so many upgrade points that they can start deploying, ATSTs, whenever they want. And, the rebels get so powerful that, you know, when the Imperial can bring out an ATST, it melts because they have all sorts of double attacks and heroic actions and stuff like that. So they got better with that. As they pumped out more and more campaigns, there was a lot more. There was a little bit less power in a lot of those upgrades, and a little bit more in the sense of catch up mechanics too. So like the rebels will always get something at a certain point, and the Imperials will always get something at a certain. So designing in with that mindset, because I think nobody wants to be committed to a campaign where you've lost the first 3 sessions of the campaign, and now
It's pretty much
you're
over.
you're way behind, and you know that it's going to take ridiculous luck to get into the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, it is important to keep the boosts moderate, I suppose is the best way to put it. To be perfectly honest, the campaign rules that we're playing for the Rebellion in the Rim right now are modified just for that very reason. Because
Mm-hmm.
I had played the campaign before with another set of friends without any of the balancing factors in there, and I was on the Imperial side, or no, on the Rebel side of that, and we just started rolling. And when we started rolling, it snowballed. There was
Right.
just nothing that could be done, and by the end of the campaign, I don't think everybody was having fun.
Right. And that's I think that's the ultimate goal of these kind of things. We want people, one, to have a reason to come and bring their ships, two, to be excited about it, and three, at the end of the night, have fun and enjoy the process and not necessarily feel overly frustrated with a loss or the repercussions of that loss, right?
Yeah.
Having that balance of making sure that whichever team or faction doesn't get too far behind, but isn't necessarily rewarded for crappy play. That's going to be the kind of thing I think as game designers, like you and I and whoever else gets into this, we're going to have to come up with that on the fly.
Yeah. I had something I was going to say, and it's completely flown out of my head. Oh, yes. One thing that I do want to touch on is another thing that people have a lot of fun with is actually being able to tell a story with it.
Right.
And I think that's one reason why I'm now really, really liking more and more the idea of every individual pilot in the squad being a character that you can flesh out over the course of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot and their ship, because they are kind of a unit. So
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool way to get player investment in that. Now, obviously, we're going to have to come up with some mechanics where, ship blows up. Okay, you're going to have a little bit of a penalty, but your dude doesn't die.
right.
He gets rescued.
There's
right.
Yeah, there's first off, based on the number of bases you have, you can repair the ship. Two,
Right.
If you can't fully repair it, it just comes back to where it has 1 damage on it to start the game.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah,
some
and so
ships
I
that's
think-
important. For some ships that's not as bad.
Right.
But
Yeah, and I think like I think there can be a balance between all that. Like that's actually something that should probably be a question before we really get in the knee deep of it, because we could have like a campaign where each team has completely customized named ships from their own like creativity, and we could have players that are like, yeah, this is Steve, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we may need to talk to our players and ask them, do we want like a Children of Mandalore type situation where we have one special unit that is, the antagonist for their squad, or excuse me, the protagonist of their squad, the main character of their squad, or do they want complete control over, upgrading generics and stuff?
yeah. Sorry, I'm looking over notes trying to. Oh, now the other thing is the squadron size. You're looking at in a standard game, you're looking at 20-point squads, but at some point, you're talking about 3 different squads on one side of the team, and while they normally fight individual battles, there's going to be times when they all come together for a bigger battle, and so for that reason, shrinking the squad size is important. It also makes things a little bit more interesting. It changes the way that you're building the squad and everything. I had looked at as a good starting point 12-point squads.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's a significant drop, but it's not so bad that, you're looking at probably 3 ships. If you're going with cheaper ships, you can go get 4, but...
Well, we have some experience with that with the crazy tag team tournament that we did last year, at the end of last year, with our with running 12-point squads and having 2 players on the same team. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of broken stuff. We know now what kind of limits you would have to put on that squad, right?
What kind of limits are you looking at? Just out of
Like
curiosity.
one, I can't remember if I have it like written out. I think I got it written out somewhere. I took notes on it, but like no more than one large ship, no more than like two medium ships. That is the extent of it, and no more than four ships total. So you can have a maximum of four.
Okay.
That keeps the count, that keeps the ship count lower on for each player. It means that yes, we're going to be moving more ships, and yes, it's going to be slower gameplay. But the challenge of coordinating with your opponent and trying to read the minds of your two opponents, that's really intriguing. And with keeping, even though the power is up, that also means that the scoring is up, right? The scenarios still matter, but you're going to have a tasty 9 point Defender Vader that's going to get caught out in the open somewhere. Do you and your teammate go and get that? And then, what do you get in trade? A lot of the combat with this kind of higher, this 24 point cap was it hit harder, it hit faster. So yes, there's going to be a little bit of problem with randomness, on that initial exchange, because you're not going to be able to draw it out for 8 turns. But I mean, you're going to have that in a 20-point X-wing either too. The big difference is making sure that each team only has a maximum of 8 shots. If we limit, or 8 ships that can shoot, put it that way. If you keep it to that, now we're looking at what basically X-wing typically is.
You were talking about that, and that made me think of one aspect that can be troubling as far as scoring battles are concerned in this type of environment, and that is, okay, what if somebody focuses so many points on one ship, and the other ships in the squad are kind of weak, but the points don't change for the ships. They no matter what upgrades you're putting on them, that X-wing is still 4 points.
5 points. Yeah.
So a lot of people try to avoid the one that's built up and just try to go after the lesser built ones, which I guess is in a kind of self-balancing thing, because if that's the way people are going to play, then you're going to try to make sure that you have means to keep those ships alive, and you'll want to put upgrades into them.
And that'll be like part of the team strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm flying Defender Vader in a 3-point whatever, and my teammate is flying like Republic, a couple of arcs, then I'm going to want that. I want to want those arcs to protect Vader, so that Vader can get in and hit hard and continue to hit hard throughout the rest of the game. One of the things that we did in this tournament with the two player teams is we broke all faction restrictions. We didn't care if you had Empire teamed up with Rebel. We didn't care if you had Empire teamed up with Empire and both of them have a Darth Vader. We don't care. We don't care if we made it where both players were friendly to each other, as opposed to, what is it called, allied in the rules. So like your favorite ships, the ARC 170s, they can take the strain and pass the focus over on somebody that's evading, that needs a focus for defense and stuff. That made for a lot of fun, interesting combos, right? And it also allowed for some really crazy crap. I think one of the reason why we went to just one large base per squad is because somebody was flying two ghosts, and or two VCX 100s, and was plowing everybody
Yeah.
because it was just so much health that you just could not get enough team focus on. Um, so yeah, there's going to be like how we set up how teams, because we don't have to necessarily have that. We can have like, well, you're just helping your own squadron. You know, you're only helping your own
Yeah.
ships. They're friendly, and your teammate is allied. And if you don't have an ability that affects an allied ship, then tough, right?
Well, I like the whole sharing thing, especially. I mean, considering that most of the time they're going to be fighting as a separate unit in different battlegrounds. It's only, in pivotal moments when they get together and fight as a unit. So it's
Right.
not going to be a constant thing where they're always sharing stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I think is going to be what would make a campaign great is it's not going to be 1v1 and 1v1 and 1v1 if we have two teams of three. You know, not every
Yeah.
night. You know, some night there's going to be a 2v2 and a 1v1 with special rules. And then some night it's going to be 3v3 on a huge map, and each squad is going to have responsibilities in each sector that they're flying in. That sounds fun to me.
So here's an interesting idea, and I don't know if it's feasible because of the way factions are built to begin with, but what if the whole premise is that this is thousands of years after everything, and on this planet people are just putting together whatever they can find to scrap together, so you could have ships from different factions in the same squad.
Right. Or you could say like
Now they would all be generics, and
mhm.
yeah.
I mean, you could say that like each squad's company like has specialized into a certain faction, and they have all the parts that they need to run squadrons of that faction,
Yeah.
right? And that makes a whole lot of sense. The one thing though, like I think there's still going to be, I would guess, and again, this is going to be like a conversation with players, but if I'm spitballing, I would say that there would be players saying, well, I want to run Biggs. I want to run Luke, right? So, you know, having some combination of that might work as well, where it's like, well, it's Biggs' great, 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 great grandson, right? Or it's like Cade Skywalker, who was, the angsty Skywalker from the 90s comic books or whatever, we can get all crazy EU about it. But but like you said, if we wanted to go just that route, like where you start with generics, you start with pilots, and then even if we were like, okay, you can upgrade a pilot, he becomes Biggs. Essentially, you pay X amount of points, and now his pilot ability is Biggs. He's
Yeah.
not really Biggs; he's still Steve, but Steve Pilot Man. But you slide Biggs' card there, and that's who it is.
Yeah.
I think that would work too.
Yeah, I guess the way that you would have to do that is from a points perspective would be, gaining the experience to go from whatever the generic cost is to the
Mm-hmm.
to the upgrade
Yeah,
cost.
yeah, and I think we could probably appropriately have like purchasing of named pilots, based off
But I
of
would say that you would have to limit that to one ability. So like if you've got an
oh
X-wing,
yeah, oh
you
yeah,
couldn't have, oh well, wait, I'm gonna have Luke and I'm gonna have Poe's
and
ability too,
Wedge.
and yeah, we'll throw in whatever.
You're right,
It'll
right, and
be
I think it
okay.
definitely
He's
needs
not
to be.
OP'd.
Yeah, I think we need to limit it to what cards there would be,
Yeah,
right? You're not going to have Poe's ability on a T-65.
right.
You're not going to have Luke's ability on a TIE fighter, right? We keep we use the named pilots that we have, and use their abilities. They're just our custom people.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like setting is tricky. Like you know, if our group really wanted to lean into the whole, well, let's keep it, we want all factions, but you know, we also want to use all these people, all the all the named characters and who they actually are because of whatever. Then you're gonna have like some sort of weird timey-wimey kind of thing where
Yeah.
your planet is stuck in space, and you're gonna have the three doctors come in and do some stuff. But I mean, yeah, that
I'm not a fan of that kind of story.
sure, sure. But that I think also that's that kind of conversation that we have to have with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Hey, if we want to keep this faction, if we want to keep this within like one era where one side is rebel and one side is empire, cool. If we want to keep it like, if we want to do multiple areas, then we could just say this is independent of the whole Star Wars timeline, right? Yeah. In a galaxy further away or whatever, right? So, I mean, the cool thing is we're coming up with it, and we have a direct audience on who we're designing for, and that's fun.
Yeah. And then, if things work well, then we can share it with everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can at least share lessons learned, right?
Truth.
Like, giving Ethan access to T-70s that all can take proton torpedoes. Bad idea.
Yeah. I would not be happy with that.
Right.
Of course, the thing is, one bit to the whole idea of having, individual characters and the basics with generic squads and everything is that everybody can start with one singular upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to build from there. So yeah,
and so my concern about that is we're not working with, yes, we want a narrative. Yes, I agree. We want a narrative, we want a story. I think having the ability to have these characters that we have improve, gain new skills, new whatever, their ships gain titles and they get whatever off of the titles, that's cool. Like I'm down for that. But I think we have to be careful about starting them too far back, starting them too close to having too many generics, because by platform, the generics aren't necessarily evil in this 20-point. Generics aren't necessarily equal in this 20-point squad cost. Right. There are ships that cost 3 that are a whole lot better than the TIE fighters that cost 3. Yeah. Right. And so we have to be careful about that. Plus, most of us are experienced players now. We want to be able to do the cool shit, right? We want to be able to have like an X-Wing that can take an R2 unit and do stuff, right? Because that's what's been kind of lacking in standard and stuff is the customizable side of things. That's one of the big complaints from players that missed 2.0 is that their building restrictions are way too tight in standard. And so I know that players want to express themselves that way. And yeah, I think we can start limited, but we don't want to keep them too limited too long. And
right.
We probably want to scale it back to the point of, yes, it's a generic. Yes, you get X amount of loadout, which is less than what Luke Skywalker would get or whatever. And
Right.
yes, you're not going to have a pilot ability, or you're going to have like a generic pilot ability that we come up with or whatever. Um, but but you still have something interesting to fly on day one.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. I think it's going to take a lot of work figuring out what that balancing act is because
Hmm.
as you said that on the one hand, some ships are definitely better than others. It Some of that is accounted for in points value, but then again, some of it is not.
Hmm. Yeah, and working within the confines of AMG's pointing, um, there's not a whole lot in fine controls that we have as far as squad costs,
Yeah.
right? So we're gonna have to just be careful about that as we go forward. Like, if our pilot picks up a force, their squad cost has to go up, right? It just is what it is,
Yeah.
right? And that's cool. Um, but we need to know that ahead of time. We need to have that expectation set ahead of time so that way players know those choices as they go forward.
Yeah. Most definitely. And I think that's a good foundation for I think starting with the characters is a good foundation on where to begin the process of coming up with a campaign because
Hmm.
I think the characters need to be central to the campaign.
Yeah, and because this is a unique situation where we are playing with pilot abilities that we're game designing as we go. Each player gets to make their character more and more like something that they would want to see in X-Wing,
Yeah.
right? Given the constraints that we give them, obviously. But yeah, I think allowing them the tool set to do that would be cool. The issue is that we're gonna have to do a lot of prep work to make sure the tool set doesn't break everything.
Absolutely. Well, I think we have kind of covered all the ground that we are going to cover. I wish we had a few folks sending their own ideas, but maybe we'll get some in the comments when this is replayed on YouTube. So,
Yeah.
welcome you guys to throw in the comments any ideas that you have, any thoughts on what we've discussed here. I want to thank you again for being on the show, Chris.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And I look forward to working with you to get this campaign together.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is an unexpected surprise that you came up with, and I'm really happy that this is a path that we can go down together.
All right. Well, you have a good night, and I will actually probably talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow. If you want somebody to fly against tomorrow, I can fly something a little more janky.
Okay.
So
Sounds good. Well, take
cool.
care.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. So, yeah, we are definitely going to make this happen. I can't say when it's going to happen or what it's definitely going to look like, but these are some of the ideas that we've had out there. I welcome you to, in the comments on YouTube, go ahead and share your thoughts. Let us know what you think would look good on the campaign for Star Wars. I will also, in the show notes, have a link to both the Facebook page and the Discord server so that you can share your thoughts there. Maybe you've got come up with some ideas that we haven't thought of. Maybe you've got some balance ideas that will help us get there. But one way or another, we want to make this something that's a lot of fun. And I really like the character driven aspect of that because I think that's what X-Wing is really all about, honestly. When you look at now, I mean, of course, competitive meta is more about what can these characters do, but everybody talks about how they want this certain character to shine, how this is their favorite character in the Star Wars universe, and how they think this character should be able to do these awesome things. Well, now you get to make your own character to shine, and that I think is going to be a really really awesome approach to putting together a campaign for X-Wing. So again, join us on Discord, join us on Facebook, throw some comments in the box here on YouTube, and we will definitely take those ideas. Again, I want to remind you that tomorrow night we are going to be doing Tuesday Night X-Wing. Going to be playing something a little bit weird, and it sounds like maybe Chris will play a little something weird with me. On top of that, on Thursday, we're going to have round 4 of Rebellion in the Rim for Armada. So looking forward to getting back into that. I am not going to spoil what happened. If you haven't watched it already on Twitch, the video is up there. It will not, unfortunately, be posted on YouTube. But Monday we will also talk about what went on in Rebellion in the Rim with both the pivotal battle and what's going to be happening in round 4 on Thursday. And then on Saturday, like I said, Thunder Forge Games will be having a tournament, and I'm planning on being there, hopefully get everything set up to stream, so you'll get some Armada action going on Saturdays. Bonus, you know? Anyway, I hope you have a great night. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends.